Okay, had to go around for a walk here. Get up and move. I told Zach I'm happy to do like a 10-minute Torah summary. Like the more I study this stuff and just one parsha, I'm like, how am I supposed to cover this stuff in 10 minutes? So it definitely won't involve Jasher because as you can see, wow, right? And this is stuff like it's all really new to me. Like I read through this once and it was like, no way I could absorb it. But I had a little walk, so I'm feeling amped up, so I won't fall asleep on you. Let's keep going. Chapter 14. In those days there was in the land of Shinar a wise man who had understanding and all wisdom and of a beautiful appearance, but he was poor and indignant. His name was Rikion, and he was hard set to support himself. Poor, needs some money, and he resolved to go to Egypt to Osiris, son of Anam, king of Egypt. I don't know if that's the same Osiris as the Gilgamesh and Nimrod, so maybe I'm wrong in that, who knows. To show the king his wisdom, for perhaps he might find grace in his sight to raise him up and give him maintenance. And Rickon, here we go, we'll go with Rickon, did so. And when Rickon came to Egypt, he asked the inhabitants of Egypt concerning the king. And the inhabitants of Egypt told the custom of the king of Egypt, for it was then custom of the king of Egypt that he went from his royal palace and was seen abroad only one day in the year, and after that the king would return to his palace to remain there. Ah, I remember this story. This is a long story. We're going into this now? Whatever. And on the day when the king went forth, he passed judgment in the land, and everyone having a suit came before the king, a case came before the king that day to obtain his request. And Rickon heard of the custom in Egypt that he would come in the presence of the king. He grieved greatly and was very sorrowful because he had to bring a gift. He didn't have anything. And in the evening, Rickon went out and found a house in ruins, formerly a bakehouse in Egypt. And he abode there all night in bitterness of soul and pinched with hunger. And sleep was removed from his eyes. And Rickon considered within himself what he should do in the town until the king made his appearance, and how he might maintain himself there. And he rose in the morning and walked about, and met in his way those who sold vegetables. Sorry. Sold vegetables and various sorts of seed with which they supplied the inhabitants. And Rickon wished to do the same in order to get a maintenance in the city, but he was acquainted with the custom of the people, and he was like a blind man among them. I was actually thinking about saying this and I forgot to say it. With these videos, what I do is either you got all, you don't have to pay for your data, you can just listen to these. So I don't expect anybody to sit down and watch these. Don't waste your life that way. Listen to these in the car, and sometimes I don't have unlimited data, so I'll just record voice memo of like a YouTube video, and I'll just record it on my phone, and I'll listen to it in the car. And because you just need the audio. Usually, the visual's not with all these Shabbat videos and all this from Bobski, but that's what I do. That's how I get it all in within a week. Because you can't sit there and watch these videos. But if you're doing it, listening to the car, to and from work, and all that, you can get it in. It's possible. Anyways. And Rickon wished to do the same. He wants to sell vegetables in order to get maintenance in the city, but he was unacquainted with the custom of the people, and he was like a blind man among them. And he went and obtained vegetables to sell them for his support. And the rabble assembled about him and ridiculed him and took his vegetables from him and left him nothing. And he rose up from there in bitterness of soul and went sighing to the bakehouse in which he remained all the night before. And he slept there the second night. And on that night again he reasoned with himself how he could save himself from starvation. And he devised a scheme how to act. He could have ate the vegetables. And he rose up in the morning and acted ingeniously, and went and hired 30 strong men of the rabble, carrying their war instruments in their hands. And he led them to the top of the Egyptian sepulchre, and he placed them there. And he commanded them, saying, thus says, how did he hire them? Saith the king, strengthen yourself, and be valiant men, and let no man be buried here until 200 pieces of silver be given. And then they may be buried. And those men did according to the order of Rickon to the people of Egypt the whole of that year. Wow. And in 8 months' time, Rickon and his men gathered great riches of silver and gold. And Rickon took a great quantity of horses and other animals, and he hired more men, and he gave them horses, and they remained with him. And when the year came, look at that. And the year came around at the time of the king went forth into the town. All the inhabitants of Egypt assembled together to speak to him concerning the work of Rickon and his men. And the king went forth on the appointed day, and all the Egyptians came before him and cried unto him, saying, May the king live forever. What is this thing thou doest in the town to thy servants, not to suffer a dead body to be buried until so much silver and gold has been given? Was there ever the like unto this done unto the whole earth, from the days of former kings, yea, even from the days of Adam unto this day, that the dead should not be buried only for a set price? We know it to be the custom of kings to take a yearly tax from the living, but thou dost not only do this, but from the dead also thou exactest a tax day by day. Now, O king, this is exactly what we got today, right? How much is it to bury somebody today? It's ridiculous, just throw me in your backyard. Maybe not want to detonate your backyard. Something cheap. Now, O king, we can no more bear this, for the whole city is ruined on this account. And dost thou not know it? We got the taxes too. That's where it all came from. It's all Rickon's fault. When the king heard all this, that they had spoken, he was very wroth, and his anger burned within him at this affair, for he had not known anything of it. You ever get blamed for something and you have no idea what's going on? And the king said, Who and where is he that darest to do this wicked thing in my land without my command? Surely you will tell me. And they told him all the works of Rickon and his men, and the king's anger was aroused, and he ordered Rickon and his men to be brought before him. And Rickon took about 1,000 children, sons and daughters, and clothed them in silk and embroidery, and he set them upon horses, and sent them to the king by means of his men. And he also took a great quantity of silver and gold and precious stones, and a strong and beautiful horse, as a present for the king, with which he came before the king, and bowed down to the earth before him. And the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Egypt wondered at the work of Rickon, and they saw his riches and the present that he had brought to the king. And it greatly pleased the king, and he wondered at it. And when Rickon sat before him, the king asked him concerning his works. And Rickon spoke all his words wisely before the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Egypt. And when the king heard the words of Rickon and his wisdom, Rickon found grace in his sight, and he met with grace and kindness from all the servants of the king, and from all the inhabitants of Egypt, on account of his wisdom and excellent speeches. And from that time they loved him exceedingly. And the king answered and said to Rickon, Thy name shall be no more be called Rickon, but Pharaoh shall be thy name, since thou didst exact a tax from the dead. And he called his name Pharaoh. That's interesting. And the king and his subjects loved Rickon for his wisdom, and they consulted with all the inhabitants of Egypt to make him prefect under the king. And all the inhabitants of Egypt and its wise men did so, and it was made a law in Egypt. And they made Rickon Pharaoh prefect under Osiris. I think that's how it's Osiris with a W, a word. King of Egypt. And Rickon Pharaoh governed over Egypt, daily administering justice to the whole city. But Osiris the king would judge the people of the land one day in the year, and he went out to make his appearance. And Rickon Pharaoh cunningly usurped the government of Egypt, and he exacted a tax from all the inhabitants of Egypt. And all the inhabitants of Egypt greatly loved Rickon Pharaoh, and they made a decree to call every king that should reign over them and their seed in Egypt Pharaoh. There you go. And therefore all the kings that reigned in Egypt from that time forward were called Pharaoh unto this day, whatever day that may be. Jasher, chapter 15. And in that year there was a heavy famine throughout the land of Canaan. That sounds familiar. And the inhabitants of the land would not remain on account of their famine, for it was grievous. And Abram and all belonging to him rose and went down to Egypt on account of the famine. And when they were at the brook of Mitzrayim, they remained there some time to rest from the fatigue of the road. So there was a point to that story, obviously. And this bleeds back into the Torah portion, the Parsha. And Abram and Sarai were walking at the border of the brook of Mitzrayim, and Abram beheld his wife Sarah, that was very beautiful. And Abram said to his wife Sarai, Since God has created thee with such a beautiful countenance, I am afraid of the Egyptians, lest they should slay me and take thee away, for the fear of God is not in these places. Surely then thou shalt do this, say thou art my sister, to all that may ask thee, in order that it may be well with me, and that we may live and not be put to death. This is why you bring things before God. You don't do things on your own. We see that throughout the Bible. People are like, well, I'm doing this for a good reason, but do it of God and not of what is good to man. For what is good to man is not of God. Define the terms. And Abram commanded the same to all those that came with him to Egypt on account of the famine. Also his nephew Lot he commanded, saying, If the Egyptians ask thee concerning Sarai, say she is the sister of Abram. I think Abram is shall bring his father righteousness. I think that's the Hebrew of that, and many nations is the Ham part. We have Ham, who became many nations of Canaan. So every name had a meaning. It's good to look those up. And yet, with all these orders, Abram did not put confidence in them, but he took Sarai and placed her in a chest and concealed it amongst their vessels. Poor Sarai. And Abram was greatly concerned about Sarai on account of the wickedness of the Egyptians. Naughty Egyptians. And Abram and all belonging to him rose up from the brook of Mitzrayim and came to Egypt. And they had scarcely entered the gates of the city when the guards stood up to them, saying, Give tithe to the king from what you have, and then you may come into the town. And Abram and those that were with him did so. And Abram with the people that were with him came to Egypt. And when they came, they brought the chest in which Sarai was concealed, and the Egyptians saw the chest. And the king's servants approached Abram, saying, What hast thou here in this chest which thou have not seen? Now open that chest, and give tithe to the king of all that it contains. And Abram said, This chest I will not open, but all you demand upon it I will give. And the Pharaoh's offers answered Abram, saying, It is a chest of precious stones. Give us the tenth thereof. Abram said, All that you desire I will give, but you must not open the chest. He's in trouble. And the king's officers pressed Abram, and they reached the chest and opened it with force. And they saw, behold, a beautiful woman was in the chest. And when the officers of the king beheld Sarai, they were struck with admiration at her beauty. And all the princes and servants of Pharaoh assembled to see Sarai, for she was very beautiful. And the king's officers ran and told Pharaoh all that they had seen, and they praised Sarai to the king. And Pharaoh ordered her to be brought, and the woman came before the king. And Pharaoh beheld Sarai, and she pleased him exceedingly, and he was struck with her beauty. And the king rejoiced greatly on her account, and made presents to those who brought him the tidings concerning her. Can't he just put some mud on her face, mess her hair up a little bit, hide her in her box? I don't know. That's what again, bring things before God in prayer. And the woman then was brought to Pharaoh's house, and Abram grieved on the account of his wife. He's God's done all this stuff for you already. You don't think he's going to protect your wife? And he prayed to the Lord to deliver her from the hands of Pharaoh. And Sarai also, I don't think he was even supposed to go to Egypt, right? It's famine, It's tough because, we all make those kind of decisions. We're starving, I gotta take care of my family, I gotta take action, you gotta take action, and we forget about praying. O Lord, O God, thou didst tell my Lord Abram to go from this land, from his father's house to the land of Canaan, and thou didst promise to do well with him, if he would perform thy commands. Now behold, we have done which thou didst command us, and we left our land and our families, and we went to a strange land, and to a people whom we have not known before. And we came to this land to avoid the famine, and this evil accident has befallen me. Now therefore, O Lord God, deliver us and save us from the hand of this oppressor, and do well with me for the sake of thy mercy. Messed up, dude. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Sarai, and the Lord sent an angel to deliver Sarai from the power of Pharaoh. Oh, this was Sarai praying. Okay. And the king came and sat before Sarai, and beheld an angel of the Lord was standing over them. And he appeared to Sarai, and said to her, Do not fear, for the Lord has heard thy prayer. And the king approached Sarai, and said to her, What is this man to thee who brought thee hither? And she said, He is my brother. And the king said, Is it incumbent upon us to make him great, to elevate him, and to do unto him all the good which thou shalt command us? And at that time the king sent to Abram silver and gold and precious stones in abundance, together with cattle, men servants, and maidservants. And the king ordered Abram to be brought, and he sat in the court of the king's house. And the king greatly exalted Abram on that night. And the king approached to speak to Sarah, and he reached out his hand to touch her. Then the angel smote him heavily, and he was terrified, and he refrained from reaching to her. I don't know what he means by smote. I don't know if he gave him a disease or something, or he got an invisible whack or something. So obviously, I don't think he could see the angel here. And then when the king came near to Sarai, the angel smote him to the ground, and he acted thus to him the whole night, and the king was terrified. And the angel on that night smote heavily all the servants of the king and his whole household on account of Sarai. And there was a great lamentation that night amongst the people of Pharaoh's house. And Pharaoh, seeing the evil that befell him, said, Surely on account of this woman has this thing happened to me. And he removed himself at some distance from her and spoke pleasing words to her. And the king said to Sarai, Tell me, I pray thee, concerning the man with whom thou camest here. And Sarai said, This man is my husband. Oh snap. And said to thee that he was my brother, for I was afraid, lest thou shouldest put him to death through wickedness. That's one way to approach the topic. And the king kept away from Sarai, and the plagues of the angel of the Lord ceased from him and his household. And Pharaoh knew that he was smitten on account of Sarai, and the king was greatly astonished at this. In the morning the king called for Abram and said to him, What the hell, man? What is thou that hast done to me? Why didst thou say, She is my sister, owing to which I took her unto me for a wife? And this heavy plague has therefore come upon me and my household. Now therefore, here is thy wife, take her and go, please, unless we die on her account. And Pharaoh took more cattle, men, servants, and maidservants, and silver and gold to give to Abram. And he returned unto him Sarai his wife. And the king took a maiden whom he begot by his concubines, and gave her to Sarai for a handmaiden. And the king said to his daughter, It is better for thee, my daughter, to be a handmaiden in this man's house than to be a mistress in my house, after we have beheld the evil that has befelled us upon account of this woman. And Abram rose, and he and all belonging to him went away from Egypt. And Pharaoh ordered some of his men to accompany him, and all that went with him. And Abram returned to the land of Canaan, to the place where he made the altar, where he at first had pitched his tent. So he's back to where he should be. And Lot the son of Haran, Abram's brother, had a heavy stock of cattle, flocks, and herds, and tents, for the Lord was bountiful to them on account of Abram. When Abram was dwelling in the land, the herdsmen of Lot quarreled with the herdsmen of Abram. So this is really going along with the parsha. The property was too great for them to maintain together in the land. So Abram's herdsmen went to feed their flock, and they would not go into the fields of the people of the land, but the cattle of Lot's herdsmen did otherwise, for they were suffered to feed in the fields of the people of the land. And the people of the land saw this occurrence daily, and they came to Abram and quarreled with him on account of Lot's herdsmen. Abram said to Lot, What is this that thou art doing to me, to make me despicable to the inhabitants of the land, that thou orderest thy herdsmen to feed thy cattle in the fields of other people? Dost thou know that I am not a stranger in this land amongst the children of Canaan? And wilt thou do this unto me? And Abram quarreled daily with Lot on account of this. But Lot would not listen to Abram, and he continued to do the same. And the inhabitants of the land came and told Abram. And Abram said unto Lot, How long wilt thou be to me for a stumbling block for the inhabitants of the land? Now I beseech thee, let there be no more quarreling between us, for we are kinsmen. But I pray thee, separate from me, go and choose a place where thou mayest dwell with thy cattle, and all belonging to thee. But keep thyself at a distance from me, thou and thy household. Be not afraid in going from me, for if anyone do an injury to thee, let me know, and I will avenge thy cause from him. Only remove from me. And when Abram had spoken all these words to Lot, Then Lot arose and lifted up his eyes toward the plain of Jordan, and he saw that the whole of this place was well watered, and good for a man, and good for man as well as affording pasture for the cattle. And Lot went from Abram to that place, and he there pitched his tent and dwelt in Sodom. And they were separated from each other. And Abram dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron. He pitched his tent there. And Abraham remained in that place many years. Jasher 16. I think now we're coming back to the king war here. So the other I guess 2 wars were not in the Parsha. So I think I made some assumptions there. Sorry. This is different. I think for sure we're on the right one now. I might be wrong again. But here, at that time, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, same guy in both accounts, third account now, sent to all the neighboring kings of Nimrod, king of Shinar, who was then under his power, and to Tidal, king of Goyim, and to Arioch, king of Eleazar, with whom he made a covenant, saying, Come up with me and assist me, that we may smite all the towns of Sodom and its inhabitants, for they have rebelled against me these 13 years. And these 4 kings went up with all their camps, about 800,000 men, so much more than they had before. And they went as they were, and smote every man they found in their road. And the 5 kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Edom, Shnember, king of Zeboim, Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, and Bela, king of Zorah, went to meet him. They all joined together in the valley of Siddim. So who do we got here? Okay, so the guy who fought, the Chedorlaomer, was a guy who fought Nimrod before, right? So now they're joining forces. He's kind of betraying what seems like his old allies. So the big wigs are gaining up on the little 5 kings here. So 4 kings versus 5. Alright, so Valley of Siddim. And these 9 kings made war in the valley of Siddim, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah were smitten before the kings of Elam. So yeah, of course. I think pretty much they got the giants, and they got Nimrod, and whew. And the valley of Siddim was full of lime pits, and the king of Elam pursued the kings of Sodom, and the kings of Sodom with their camps fled and fell into the lime pits, and all that remained went into the mountain for safety. And the 5 kings of Elam came after them and pursued them to the gates of Sodom, and they took all that there was in Sodom. And they plundered all the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they also took Lot, Abram's brother's son, and his property, and they seized all the goods of the cities of Sodom, and they went away. And Eunuch, Abram's servant, who was in the battle, saw this, and told Abram all that the kings had done to the cities of Sodom, and that Lot was taken captive by them. And Abram heard this, and he rose up with about 318 men. He said about, maybe it was 300, that were with him, and that night pursued these kings and smote them. And they all fell before Abram and his men. And there was none remaining but the 4 kings who fled, and they each went to his own road. So just the 4 kings get away. So that's Nimrod and these other guys, and all of how many? 800,000? I can't remember. Where is it? It's a lot. I can't remember. 800,000 men. Woohoo! It's a lot of men. So 600,000 died in that other battle. Just the 4 kings run away. So 796,000. Or 100, sorry. And Abram recovered all the property of Sodom, and he also recovered Lot and his property, his wives and little ones, and all belonging to him, so that Lot lacked nothing. And when he returned from smiting these kings and his men past the valley of Siddim, where the kings had made war together, and Bera, king of Sodom, and the rest of his men that were with him went out from the lime pits, so they're still hiding, which they had fallen, to meet Abram and his men. And Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, the same was Shem. So translation's a little different here, but Adonai, God. So Melchizedek is the other name. So he's the king of Jerusalem. he was Shem. So Shem went out with his men to meet Abram and his people with bread and wine, and they remained together in the valley of Melech. So that's the high priest of the Most High. Zedek is priest, Adonai is Most High, so high priest of the Most High. And people argue this point a lot. A lot of people think, oh, it was Yeshua back then. It was the high priest, because he's a high priest now. There's some problems with that. Maybe we'll get into that in our discussion. I think it makes more sense that it was Shem or something like that, because we need to have different priestly lines, because Yeshua was from the tribe of Judah, so we can't be a Melchizedekian priest. I mean, he can't be a Levitical priest is the problem. That was what the book of Hebrews is all about, is that there is a change in the priesthood. So Adonai Zedek, or Melchizedek, blessed Abram, and Abram gave him a tenth from all that he had brought from the spoil of his enemies, for Adonai Zedek was a priest before God. That's written within his name. And all the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah who were there, and with their servants, approached Abram and begged him to return them their servants whom he had made captive, and to take unto himself all the property. And Abram answered the kings of Sodom, saying, As the Lord liveth, who created heaven and earth, and who redeemed my soul from all affliction, and delivered me this day from my enemies, and gave them into my hand, I will not take anything belonging to you, that you may not boast tomorrow, saying, Abram became rich from our property that he saved. I'm still just blown away. 300. I mean, like, let's assume that a good number died. So he's at least, I mean, he's killing so many more numbers. 318. This is literally like the 300 movie, but like quadruple the size. You want to think of it that way. So forget 300. Let's make this a movie. That's what I'm saying. Do it right. For the Lord my God, in whom I trust, said unto me, Thou shalt lack nothing, for I will bless thee in all thy works of thy hands. Now therefore, behold, here is all belonging to you. Take it and go. As the Lord liveth, I will not take from you from a living soul down to a shoe tie or thread, except expecting the expanse of food, and those who went out with me to battle, as also the portions of the men who went with me, Anar, Eshcol, and Mamre, they and their men, as well as those who had remained to watch the baggage. They shall take their portion in the spoil. Also, you got to consider that the whatever his name is, Chedorlaomer, that's king of the Canaanites. So you got likely a good number of giants in this battle. Remember, we had the 5,000 to beating the 600 some thousand. So. And the kings of Sodom gave Abram according to all that he had said, and they pressed him to take whatever he chose, but he would not. And he sent away the kings of Sodom and the remainder of their men. He gave them orders about Lot, and they went to their respective places. And Lot, his brother's son, also sent away with his property, and he went with them, and Lot returned to his home to Sodom. And Abram and his people returned to their home in the plains of Mamre, which is in Hebron. At that time the Lord again appeared to Abram in Hebron, and said to him, Do not fear, thy reward is very great before me, and I will not leave thee until I shall have multiplied thee, and blessed thee, and made thy seed like stars in heaven, which thou cannot measure or number. And I will give unto thy seed all these lands which thou seest with thine eyes. To them I will give them for an inheritance forever, to be strong. Do not fear, walk before me, and be perfect. And in thy 78th year of Abram's life, in that year died Reu, the son of Peleg. And the days of Reu were 239 years, and he died. Peleg, we all think to be a Nephilim giant, because I'm pretty sure Peleg means like a great separation, or like an earthquake, or he's considered to be a big dude. I don't know who Reu is and why we're referring to him here. And Sarah, the daughter of Haran, Abram's wife, was still barren in those days. So she did not bear Abram either son or daughter. So Reu, whoever he's dying, there's something important about that. So it's politically changing something. And when she saw that she bare no children, she took her handmaiden Hagar, whom Pharaoh had given her. So back to Hagar. That's where Hagar came from, right? So if he had never gone to Egypt, maybe trust in the Lord, we never would have had the Hagar situation here, which we get into in the end of the Parsha, whom Pharaoh had given her. And she gave her to Abram, her husband, for a wife. And Hagar learned all the ways of Sarai, as Sarai taught her. She was not in any way deficient in following her good ways. And Sarai said to Abram, Behold, there is my handmaiden, Hagar. Go to her, that she may bring forth upon my knees, that I may also obtain children through her. And at the end of 10 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is the 85th year of Abram's life, Sarai gave Hagar unto him. And Abram hearkened to the voice of his wife Sarai, and he took his handmaid Hagar, and Abram came to her, and she conceived. So again, Abram's trying to fulfill what God promised through his own works. Seeing a pattern here many times. Not making fun of him, because we all do the same thing. It's the whole plank in your own eye, trying to remove the speck in your brother's. And when Hagar saw that she had conceived, she rejoiced greatly, and her mistress was despised in her eyes. And she said within herself, This can only be that I am better before God than Sarah my mistress. For all the days that my mistress has been with the Lord, she did not conceive. But me, the Lord, has caused in so short a time to conceive him. So I like this idea, because it kind of makes more sense. Obviously, like, Sarah's thinking like, oh, well, I'm not really supposed to be the one that Abram's supposed to be with. All the generations are going to be through Hagar, and I'm just like the sideshow. I never really mattered. So yeah, it could really depress you and make you angry. And when Sarai saw that Hagar had conceived by Abram, Sarai was jealous of her handmaid. And Sarai said within herself, This is surely nothing else, but that she must be better than I am. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee, for at thy time when thou didst pray before the Lord for children, why didst thou not pray on my account, that the Lord should give me seed from thee? She's not wrong. Those women, they're always right. Sorry. All right, I gotta roll. I got about an hour to get through this. When I speak to Hagar in thy presence, she despised my words, because she was conceived, and thou wilt say nothing to her. May the Lord judge between me and thee for what thou hast done. The Lord's going to judge you, Abram. So sometimes the woman's sin is blamed on the husband, right? Back to the Garden of Eden. We like to blame the woman, but it's our fault. We're supposed to be the man. We're supposed to be stepping up. This is very evident in my own life. I'm putting my own self out here, because my wife has fallen away from following God, and that's on me. It's my fault, because I didn't get into this stuff. I wasn't a strong person. I used her as my rock. I'm like, well, look at her. She's singing in the church. If I marry her, surely I'll be in God's grace, and I'll follow. And you were using same problem, right? Looking back, right? I'm pulling an Abram, right? We all like to pull Abrams. And an angel of the Lord found her in the place where she had fled by a well. And he said to her, Do not fear, for I will multiply thy seed, and for thou shalt bear a son, and thou shalt call his name Ishmael. Now then return to Sarai thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And Hagar called the place that well Beer-lahai-roi, and something like that. It is between Kadesh and the wilderness of Bered. And Hagar at that time returned to her master's house. And at the end of the days, Hagar bare a son to Abraham, and Abram called his name Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when he began. And you guys can see this runs pretty well, with the Parsha. I haven't noticed anything that was contrary. A little extra something here and there. And those days, and stuff missing too. So, not that like this is more than Genesis. It's because Genesis has got a lot. I think it's got more than meat, because it's inspired. It definitely got more of that relationship. This is kind of like the history, if you want to think about it that way. And in those days, in the 91st year, but it's important to have the context, right? It's important to have this context. I think it helps a lot in the understanding of the mindset and what was going on. setting up the stage. And in the 91st year, because they would they would all know this stuff. They all knew this stuff. We don't know this stuff, and that's why we get a little confused, and that's why we got somebody falling away from the church. Is we just don't try to strive and understand the Hebraic mindset and the Torah, because everything else in the Bible falls apart if we don't. Sorry, very important point. Continuing, in the 91st year of the life of Abram, getting old now. Well, at that time, it's probably not that old, because they're still living pretty long then. But it's still. I mean, anyway, when he was like 60s, killing like thousands of guys by himself, so. Probably a pretty jacked dude, right? Old jack dude. The children of Chittim made war with the children of Tubal. For when the Lord had scattered the sons of men upon the face of the earth, the children of Chittim went and embodied themselves in the plain of Canopia, and they built themselves cities there and dwelt by the river Tibereu. And the children of Tubal dwelt in Tuscana, and their boundaries reached the river Tibereu. And the children of Tubal built a city in Tuscany, Tuscanan, and they called the name Sabina, after the name of Sabina, son of Tubal, their father, and they dwelt there unto this day. I'm not really sure what this is describing. Somebody should let me know. Maybe Ethiopia might be the river, might be the end of the Nile. And it was at that time that the children of Chittim made war with the children of Tubal, and the children of Tubal were smitten before the children of Chittim. And the children of Chittim caused 370 men to fall from the children of Tubal. And at that time the children of Tubal swore to the children of Chittim, saying, You shall not intermarry amongst us, and no man shall give his daughter to any of the sons of Chittim. For all the daughters of Tubal were in those days very fair. For no women were then found in the whole earth as fair as the daughters of Tubal. Need to find myself a daughter at Tubal. And all who delighted in the beauty of the women went to the daughters of Tubal and took wives from them. And the sons of men, kings and princes, who greatly delighted in the beauty of the women, took wives in those days from the daughters of Tubal. And at the end of 3 years after the children of Tubal had sworn to the children of Chittim not to give them their daughters for wives, about 20 men of the children of Chittim went to take some of the daughters of Tubal, but they found none. For the children of Tubal kept their oaths not to intermarry with them, and they would not break their oaths. And in the days of harvest the children of Tubal went into their fields to get their harvest, when the young men of Chittim assembled, and went to the city of Sabina. And each man took a young woman from the daughters of Tubal, and they came to their cities. And the children of Tubal heard of it, and they went to make war with them. And they could not prevail over them, for the mountain was exceedingly high from them. And when they saw they could not prevail over them, they returned to their land. And at the revolution of the year, the children of Tubal went and hired about 10,000 men from those cities that were near them, and they went to war with the children of Chittim. And the children of Tubal went to war with the children of Chittim to destroy their land and distress them. And in this engagement the children of Tubal prevailed over the children of Chittim. And the children of Chittim, seeing that they were greatly distressed, lifted up the children which they had by the daughters of Tubal upon the wall which they had built before the eyes of children of Tubal. And the children of Chittim said to them, Have you come to make war with your own sons and daughters? And have we not been considered your flesh and bones from that time till now? And when the children of Tubal heard this, they ceased to make war with the children of Chittim, and they went away. And they returned to the cities, and the children of Chittim at that time assembled and built 2 cities by the sea, and they called one Purtu and the other Ariza. And Abram the son of Terah, who was then 99 years old, at that time the Lord appeared to him and said to him, I will make my covenant between me and thee, and I will greatly multiply thy seed. And this is the covenant which I make between me and thee, and every male child be circumcised, and thou and thy seed after thee. The circumcised, the Hebrew word mol, which means to be cut off and separated and set apart. At 8 days old shall it be circumcised, and this covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And now therefore thy name shall no more be called Abram, but Abraham. And thy wife shall no more be called Sarai, but Sarah. For I will bless you both, and I will multiply your seed after you, they will become a great nation, and kings shall come before you. So we got the two books here, which interesting. Learn more about the Genesis 14 war, which we covered in here a little bit. I think he looks at the names. I don't have these books, but it's interesting. He's got the Archon Invasion, Rise and Fall of the Nephilim, and he's got a DVD part 1 here. Might look into that. But there we go. Just looking to see if he's got any other maps here. Anything interesting? It looks like this is on all the Brit Hadashah portions. Hebrews 8 conspiracy. Maybe I'll read that, see if it's worth going into. I'm not gonna do that right now because Jasher was long and I'm tired and need a break. But you can check out all these videos. He's got some. Oh, here we go. Some timelines. You do not have permission to add comments. Well, I would like to. Let's take a look at these timelines because these do. We got the Tower of Babel. What do we got here? Let's go back. Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. Alright, so wow, we got lots going on. Lots. We got the Tower of Babel. We got lots of stuff going on here. We got Shem. He died at 600 years old. Noah dying before him at 950. So Shem, yeah, he would have been alive for the war, the Genesis 14 war that we're talking about. It looks like he's dying. He's kind of alive for the Abrahamic covenant, it looks like. So it might be that, like, when it says Joseph goes to the house of Shem, it'll mean that it's actually Shem. It could be just his descendants and the Melchizedekian priesthood, or the Adonizek priest of God. Zadok. Zadok was priest in Hebrew. Wow, there's so much to look at these charts. These charts are like, let me blow this one up. We got the flood, Tower of Babel. Oh, the X is the war. Okay. So the 14 war was against the offspring of the giants. We see the Anakim and the Rephaim filled the land of Canaan when Joshua came in there. And we got Peleg again. I mean, I want to look into more about who this Peleg was and his son dying. I wonder why that was important. But who knows? Who knows? These are the questions. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll do the next portion of Jasher next time.